important is your status in society kind of jumps up dramatically. And you'll feel this. And part of it is your own personal perception. But at the same time, you go from being a PhD student or a PhD candidate with, just kind of bumbling along in the dark like we all do, to you actually have a PhD and you can call yourself, doctor. And that's part of the reason why I say doctor is at the beginning of the videos is to sort of communicate that, I do have a PhD. I've gone through this before. And so, it's communicating something to the outside world. And a lot of people kind of get that, right? But they don't get the fact that you are a PhD student or a PhD candidate. They just don't get it. They don't understand it. But they get doctor for a lot of different reasons. But they get that when you say that, and it sort of commands a little bit more sort of status. So, in the classroom, for example, teaching undergraduates, I'll end up using that language because it communicates something to people rather than, just my first name. And it's just simply because it's communicating something that I've accomplished something, and it sort of helps manage expectations, right, a little bit more. And I've learned that. It's not something that I have, it wasn't easy for me to call myself that, Dr. Maslach. It took a long time for me to do that. And then once I start to do that, it sort of fits on you, and then it sort of everybody else, it just communicates a lot of stuff. So life does get better in terms of those components after your PhD, and a lot of it has to do with uncertainty and sort of figuring out, how to deal with things, right? So you've already accomplished that thing, and you're communicating to yourself and to others that you know how to do this particular thing, and you can keep going with what you're doing, as well as the financial constraints or the financial concerns. That does change a little bit. Especially, maybe not at the get-go. So I myself struggled for a couple of years to find a job, but then after that, I found a job, and financially it did get better once I actually completed that thing, completed the PhD and had a job and stuff. So one other thing. So what are the components that don't change? What's the most important thing that doesn't change? And so the most important thing that I think is extremely important for you, if you're watching this, you have to pay attention to this, is the social comparison game, right? So if you're still in academia, once you've done a PhD, you're still going to want to turn to others and see what they're doing. Sometimes you get advice from other people. Sometimes there's just a lot of input from other people in different surroundings in terms of telling you what to do, right? So this is called vicarious learning, and often what ends up happening with vicarious learning is you're uncertain about what you should do. You have sort of performance setbacks, right? So there's a whole field on this in terms of performance feedback, but you have performance setbacks. You experience maybe you're not publishing enough, or and enough is all relative, right? So you might be a publishing star and you're just going crazy and you're writing a lot and you're publishing all these papers, but it still doesn't feel like enough, right? So then what you end up doing, because you feel like you're failing, you end up turning to other people to learn what they're doing, right? So two ways that you could do that is you can get knowledge from them, information from them, or you observe what they're doing and try to copy or mimic or imitate what the other people are doing, in terms of maybe, you might pick up something like, such and such is a prolific scholar and they get up at 5 a.m. or, 3 a.m. every morning. So I'm going to start trying to get up at 3 a.m. every morning and try to do that. But the lesson that I want you to do, or I want you to think about, is, and this is the important thing that I've learned, and I'm still working on it, this is a really tricky thing for me, is you have to create boundaries. You have to disregard other people. And that is a big component that I've learned throughout this PhD journey, and I'm still struggling with, is creating boundaries where other people do this kind of thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do that kind of thing. Right, so it doesn't mean if somebody says that, that they're working through reading papers and they can read 10 or 15 a day, that doesn't mean that you have to read 10 to 15 papers a day. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that you're not seeing and you're not sort of picking up on. So you might have different processing speeds in terms of how you're picking up that information. they might be able to pick up information extremely quickly based on maybe they have certain an intellect, for example. You might have sort of special things that they don't have. For example, you can endure for a long time, or that you can sort of look at a bigger picture and go towards that bigger picture, and it might take you a longer time to get there, but you can go towards that bigger picture that other people can't.